Today I want to talk about why lucid dreaming has made me a bit more of an idealist than a realist, and also what those two things mean. Hey guys, welcome back to Tipharot. It's me Matt here, and today I'm talking a bit about idealism and realism, and in particular how lucid dreaming has changed my overall view of the world. So, if you ever had a lucid dream, you know just how real these things feel. You can touch an object and it feels like you're touching the real object. You can walk around and interact with this world that is all in your head. And how is this possible? How is it possible that our brain is able to create these accurate representations of the world? And given that we know that it is possible, what does this actually mean for our experiences during waking life? This is a question that came to me very early in my experiences. I had to ask myself this. If my lucid dreams are so real, and yet I know that this is just something that's going on in my head, then how do I know that all my waking experiences aren't the same? Really think about that for a moment. The only way that we actually are able to differentiate between a lucid dream, just being something fictional in our head, and our waking life being real and tangible and so on, is because it's the one that we're used to. We're used to our waking life, that's just the way things normally are, and we notice that there is a difference when we're having a lucid dream, that there are certain things that don't match up to our normal experience, our normal framework. But what if our normal framework is wrong? Now this is something that a lot of people seem to have trouble trying to accept. If you don't believe this and you don't want to agree, that's fine, but personally I kind of don't see how it's possible not to understand this. Everything that you experience comes to you through your senses. Your senses, come to you through your brain and so on. You basically get all these signals and you're interpreting them in a certain way. And that's what you see, what you touch, what you taste, what you smell and what you hear. All of that is just, sensory input that you're processing in a certain way and experiencing in a certain way. And just as in a lucid dream, you can be tricked into having this sensory experience as if you're somewhere, real and tangible even when you're not. The same thing can happen in your waking life. Even all of the scientific experiments we conduct and so on, where we're using, external machines and all of that, all of the data that we look at, all of the actual experiments, when we observe them, we're observing from a position where we are kind of locked behind the input of our senses. We are forever locked into this way of seeing things only as they're processed by the brain. And so this means that we can never truly know what the real world is like. We only ever know an interpretation of it. Now we can assume that this interpretation is pretty accurate most of the time, but we know that there are certain things that we don't see, and we've been lucky enough to be able to, work around with equipment and so on to be able to discover some of these things that we can't see or experience. Like for example, non-visible wavelengths like infrared and so on. They're there all of the time, but we can't see them because of our limited sensory equipment. But there are probably plenty of things that we simply do not even know how to begin looking for with our equipment and so on because of our limited senses once again. On top of that, things like our memories come into question, because we have these real memories of things, and a lot of the time we find out that our memory can, play tricks on us. We can remember an event one way when in actual fact it happened another, and our memory just deteriorated over time. So what if, for example, all of your memories up to this moment were false? You wouldn't know any better because they would all seem real to you, just the same way as if you really did have, real memories of what happened. Another one is, what if you were actually the only person in the world, and you were just hallucinating the entire thing the whole time? You'd have no way of knowing because anything you try to verify through, say, an experiment or whatever, first comes to you through your senses. Now this is called idealism. The idea behind the idealism is that you can't actually know for certain the real way the world is. You are always limited by your perception of the world. You're only ever going to see things through your sensory input, which is already processed by your brain and so on, and so there's no way of ever knowing for certain what is going on outside of that. Realism, on the other hand, asserts that everything just exists the way it does, without our observation mattering, and without our perception mattering. The problem comes when people start to believe that, just because they experience something, or they have an experiment telling them something, or whatever, that this is necessarily the way that the world works. Now, this doesn't mean to discount all of this stuff, because this is the best evidence that we have. The best evidence that we have for anything is our own experiences, and, the evidence from scientific studies and so on. But we have to realise that this is only ever going to be a best approximation. We can never be 100% certain of anything other than, our own experiences, and we can never be certain of what is going on outside of us. Now, I'm not an expert on these subjects, so perhaps I'm using the wrong terms here to describe what I'm talking about, but basically from lucid dreaming I've come to the conclusion that I can't just blindly trust my senses to display an accurate picture of the world. I know that they're probably giving me a good representation, but I know there's a lot of stuff missing. There's a lot of stuff that we are completely unaware of going on in the world. And there's a lot of stuff that we don't realise is happening around us. You know, there are a lot of distortions in what we see and experience and remember. A lot of things we remember one way happen another way. A lot of things we see as happening one way, we might be completely missing part of the picture because we're just not paying attention to it, or because, you know, something is going on with our brains that is causing us to perceive it in a different way. And so we have to, you know, take that into account. And I think lucid dreaming can teach us a valuable lesson here that, you know, we are just perceiving things based on what our brain tells us is going on with our senses. We are not seeing the world 100% as it is. We are seeing an interpretation of it at all times. Most of the time that interpretation is going to be perfectly good for us to act on and so on, but know that your senses can play tricks on you. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you did, remember to subscribe up there for more. And if you haven't already, then definitely check out my Patreon page. You can check it out whether you want to support the channel or not. You can find my posts there each week. I tell you guys what videos are coming out next week and so on, so check that out. Thank you guys for watching. Take care.